Let's do
Awesome,
it.
awesome. Welcome. Today's guest is Pabel Martinez. I am so excited. And rather than speaking for you, Pabel, I want you to do your own introduction because that's how we do here. I'm going to make you do the work. And also, I'm curious when people ask you, like, what do you do? I know you do a lot of things. So how do you answer that question? What do you do? How do you keep busy?
So well, you already said my name, Pabel Martinez. I'd say I'm a native New Yorker, a storyteller, and a tech founder.
Brilliant. I love that elevator pitch, right? A lot of people struggle with that. Either they say nothing or they talk for 10 minutes. And so of those things, what's kind of, I don't know, what takes up most of your energy these days?
These days, it's being a tech founder. I think since quitting my job, I started with being a storyteller,
Mm,
and I still think that's going to be the differentiator even with our tech product because anybody could create tech. Uh, I think the stories that I tell are going to be the differentiator for us from a marketing perspective.
So speaking of the product, I mean, you've been kind of teasing us on LinkedIn, and I'm a fan from afar, right? So tell me what you can tell me about the product, the launch, kind of the energy around it, the mission, the purpose. I'm all ears.
Yeah, I mean, so let's start with the storytelling, right? So when I first created this brand, Plural or Plurawl, however you want to pronounce it, I started with sharing stories from the community about the challenges that they were experiencing at work. And what I realized was that not one person was talking about like, oh, I need this additional training and skills. Like, no, like they got the job, they have the skills, they have the experience. What was coming up consistently was these limiting beliefs that
Mhm.
people were telling themselves that then hindered their ability to do their job. You know, them thinking they're not good enough for this, them thinking that they're not ready for this role, etc. Right? Um, and that would have like a really big impact not only on them but the organization. So a lot of times I would, remind them, hey, like this is a limiting belief. Like you can do this, blah blah. So then I just wanted to create an app, technology that would essentially coach them through that process. And so I created an AI powered self discovery coach that when people test it, they said that it feels like they're talking to a therapist.
Mm, that's awesome. And how long have you been working on this project?
Oof, probably like the past year. At first, it was doing focus groups, trying to get an understanding of like what are the wellness apps that people are using these days. Why do they like it? Why don't they like it? And then trying to figure out how do we put our own unique spin on it? Because there's thousands of them out there,
Right.
and yeah, I think the differentiator for us is this connection between mental health and work,
Mm,
which I think is often separated.
yeah.
But I think for us, it's like business and career conversations, I think is a really good entry point to get people to open up about their trauma and their mental health.
Yeah. I mean, as a coach, I work with a lot of immigrants or people from self-identified macho cultures where they don't talk about that stuff, or historically they weren't brought up to talk about that stuff. And now that they're here in the New York City market or in the United States, they still don't talk about that stuff. And so when they come into coaching, it's a really interesting entree point to talk about. I'm not going to necessarily talk about all of your trauma in half an hour, and it is not my place to be a therapist, but I can create a therapeutic like or cathartic enough, safe enough space for you to talk about whatever it is on your mind today. Like whatever is preventing you from being your best, baddest self today, that's fair game.
Yeah, I mean, and we're all going through things, but
Yeah.
another thing that I learned in these conversations is that we often don't talk to anyone about what we're experiencing. You know, our families maybe, you're talking about like immigrant backgrounds, maybe they haven't been in the same rooms that we've been in, right? Yes, they've worked, but not these high paying jobs that we have, right? Our friends, same thing. Like they may have cool jobs, but maybe there's a level of like envy and jealousy that
Mm,
for right. So and maybe we feel ashamed for complaining about a job that gives us like free lunch and is paying us. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And then our coworkers oftentimes people that don't look like us, right? So even like yourself, like if you have a coach, we're like, oh my God, finally I can talk to someone that understands what I'm going through. And I'm sure you probably have like a lot of venting sessions where people are just like vomiting their trauma. And it
Yep.
happens, right? Because it's like the first time that we don't like talk about our experiences, but talking about it is like I think the first part of that healing process.
Mm. You mentioned vomiting, right? Like venting sessions. It sure happens. And the word that I've come across, the Greek word logorrhea, it's like diarrhea for the mouth, right? Word diarrhea, logorrhea. It does happen. And I think one of the things I really enjoy about why I didn't become a social worker or a therapist proper, why I became a coach, is that you can vent for a few minutes, and then what? Do you want to continue venting? That's cool. Do you want to act on it? Do you want to problem solve? Like the client, the person on the other side is the driver. I don't tell them what my agenda is. I mean, my agenda is for everyone to be happy and fulfilled, but the person's got to want that. So back to your app. So I like the idea. It's essentially 24/7, right? The availability for them is, I could be sleeping, I could be on vacation, and the person has access to sort of that avatar 24/7. Is that right?
Yeah, and that's a huge selling point. And
Mm,
I see this app not as like replacing therapists or counselors or coaches. For me, I see it as a complementing, because even when I was in therapy, I was in therapy for like 4 years, but I didn't see my therapist every day. Sometimes
right.
we couldn't even meet every week just because of like schedule conflict. So at best, let's say we see each other every week.
Yeah.
All right, well, what happens those other 6 days of the week? It's not like I don't need someone to vent to.
Yeah.
It's not like I don't need someone to validate my feelings or even help me process my thoughts, right? And sure, now I've sort of like built the tools to do some of those things myself, but
No.
it's not as productive. So I do think that we need tools in between. And right now, people are already recommending apps for people to use in between, but
Yep.
it's not like they even like the apps that they're recommending. They're just like, oh, well, this is what's out there, you know?
Yeah. It's interesting because even, I mean, coaches have coaches, therapists need therapists, right? When you're dealing with heavy stuff all day long. And
Yeah.
frankly, not everybody has that cohort of close friends who want to talk, or people are busy, have families, young kids, or multiple jobs, or one very, very,
Yeah.
stressful job. So not everyone has the ability or the time to be, to help and to listen. And so I really do see this app as, like you said, in between, like a complement or a kind of fill in. And I also do think that there are probably some, whether it's neurodivergent or introverted or
Mhm.
people who just, aren't necessarily looking for human to human interaction in this moment. It could be a
Yeah.
nice little entree point to say, you know what, let me just kind of like have this third objective party, this nebulous avatar kind of give me some feedback and walk me off the ledge, so to speak.
It's really interesting. There's one use case that a friend brought up, how she's using it as a way to for her mother to access support, because in many cultures there's this idea of like, even if you do have a mentor, even if you do have this hypothetical figure, coach,
Mm,
etc., that is experienced in various ways, there is still a stigma around seeking support,
yeah,
or even having the idea of someone else have access to your trauma, because maybe they can use that to have power over you, right? So this idea of talking to like this person, but that doesn't really exist, so your secrets are safe in some way,
right, right.
like really goes a long way. So for this older generation, because I think the younger that we get, these stigmas are kind of going away, not completely, but a little
Yeah,
bit more
yeah.
and more. So for someone of an older generation to be open to not be open to going to therapy, but to be open to talking about it, like with this AI, it's really interesting.
I mean, I use AI almost daily intentionally, right? Because it's already on all the platforms and the Zooms and the phones, it's already embedded. But I'm saying I
Mhm.
use it intentionally very often to sort of edit down, clarify my thoughts. And for me, it is absolutely like a supplement or a complement to my
Mhm.
skills. I still am a generator of my unique, silly, crazy, funky, awesome ideas. And there are times when I'll use AI as a generator of ideas, and for me it's not where my brain goes, so it's nice to kind of basically give it my ideas and say, hey, let's clean this up, because I'm hyper energy, and I have so many ideas. My problem isn't writer's block. My problem is like, how do I edit it down so that the average Joe and Juan and Schmo can kind of access my overwhelming abundance of ideas. So I
That's
I
so
think of it as
funny.
just a tool.
Me too. I'm the same way. I never ran out of journal prompts.
Exactly. Yeah. Like sometimes people will sell, a course of like, come up with ideas for LinkedIn content. I'm like, that's never been my problem. Like I have a running list of like 30 things I could be writing about at any one point. So for me, it's actually less is more. But I actually want to hear a little bit more about, because the reason you were ever on my radar in the first place is your definition or approach, your philosophy really around professionalism, what that means. Like, I just remember being on LinkedIn. I don't know if this was like early pandemic, pre-pandemic, or it's just nebulous the time, but in the last few years, just the way that you talk about professionalism, I almost call you like a not an anti-professionalism, but like a different professionalism or a different understanding of professionalism advocate. So I want you to kind of talk to me and future listeners and readers, because I'll be sharing this on my newsletter as well. How did you like start talking about professionalism? What does that mean to you? I really want you to share that because I think you have a really neat approach.
Yeah, I mean, going back to those limiting beliefs that I would
Mm,
hear in these conversations, there are so many stories that we make up in our head
yeah,
as if we can predict the future. And we often do that at work, right? And a lot of it is tied to this idea of professionalism, because professionalism is less about the actual rules that are in place, and it's more about these unspoken, unwritten rules that we've just adopted as society, right?
yeah,
So I often do speaking engagements, and I put up a picture of like Lil Wayne with a bunch of face tattoos, piercings all over his face, dreads, locks, a bunch of gold, everything, right?
yep,
And I ask people, does he look unprofessional if he worked at this organization that I'm speaking at, right? And oftentimes people are like, yeah. And I ask them to explain it. What you hear is like 30 different examples
hmm,
or reasons as to why he is unprofessional.
right,
But what you're hearing is that everyone has their own definition for it. Everyone is making
sure,
their own idea or story around what this word means. But when you look up the word in the dictionary, it just means a skill or competence expected of a professional. That's it.
mm, mm, mm,
So we oftentimes think that we can't do something because of how we think people are going to perceive us.
yeah.
But in reality, if people call you unprofessional and it has nothing to do with your skill and competence, then it's really them that needs to change. They're the one that needs to evaluate their own bias around what that word means to them.
It's funny because, or maybe not so funny, because in Lil Wayne's world and in the world of rap or hip hop, having those face tattoos and all and the grills and the diamonds and all the jewelry, it's actually part of the brand, right? If anything, it helps him sell more albums, right? So
Yeah.
in some ways, it's like he's very professional for what he wants to do, for the profession that he chose in the world. So I
I
think
would
that,
say I would say he's professional for any profession,
yeah,
as long as he demonstrates the skill and competence expected for the role. Here's an
yep,
example, right? When I ask people about Little Wayne, people often they try to pass the judgment from themselves to someone else, and they say, "Oh, well, like I don't mind, but I'm worried about my clients, right?" So I
hmm,
ask them a question. So, all right, tell me about your worry. Are you worried that your clients are gonna buy less from you, whatever it may be, whether it is insurance, your insurance broker, whether it's ads, whatever it is, right?
yep,
Cars, and they say yes, people are going to buy less if Lil Wayne is the person, right? And I'm like, oh, so you can predict the future? Because
right,
that's what you're doing right now. You're saying
hmm,
if you put Lil Wayne in this position, you are going to sell less. Have clients told you that they're going to buy less if I show up to work one day showing up as Lil Wayne? No, no client has ever told you that because you've never had that conversation, right?
yep,
Why do we always jump to the worst case scenario when we try to create like when we're creating these fictional stories in our heads? We always jump to worst case scenario, even
yeah.
when it isn't about
Well,
these
it's
these
fear.
fictional
It's
scenarios.
fear.
Of course, I'm trying to instill a lot more optimism. Like,
Yeah.
why do we never create the story in our heads of like, oh, if I wear a pink suit to work, it's not that people aren't going to take me seriously, but someone's going to compliment me, and my day is going to go really well.
Fear, 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 right? We live in a society of fear mongering. And also, you got to admit that there is potential, right? So, business as usual is status quo. Any kind of change in your brand image, whether you're putting on face tattoos, or you're, doing a different font style on your website, that change may have a difference in how you're perceived in the world. And that can lead to more or less sales. And so, most people are unwilling to take that risk. They're unwilling to play that game or that experiment. And that is why people will, provide all of these excuses or definitions or interpretations of what it is. Now, it's very difficult for somebody who's the sole breadwinner, let's say, for their family to say, hey, I want you to take that risk and be more authentic or be sort of more authentically you and wear that hoodie, right? Because that hoodie, as as we know, could get somebody killed quite literally in certain places. It could also, if you're what's his name, Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, a hoodie could be the billionaire status, right, for other people, right? So the hoodie in itself is a neutral thing, but where it is applied can have literally life or death, millionaire, billionaire sort of implications in someone's life. So it's actually really, really, it's asking a lot of somebody or of yourself to take that risk. But there are people who are willing to take that risk. And there are people who've taken that risk and have realized, wow, putting on this hoodie or doing this tattoo or doing something silly on LinkedIn actually is getting me the type of people, it's attracting the type of energy and the kind of vibe and the type of people that I want to attract. So there are, I think, risk takers, and you're frankly you're one of them.
Yeah, and I think let's just go back to like wearing a hoodie at work. I think that is that's a much safer option or example than compared to your example of like life or death. I mean, sure. I mean, we can die in a lot of different scenarios. Like I can die taking a plane. I can die doing a lot of things.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I think that's a realistically safe example. Now, are you going to be judged? Maybe,
Oh
but
yeah.
I think we need to do a few things with that judgment. One, we need to document it, um, and share that experience with someone.
Even just one
Uh,
person.
yeah, and find someone that I'm not saying report it to HR, but I think we do need to
Right.
share it with I think we do need to share
Yeah.
it with someone that we're comfortable with. So for
Mm-hmm.
example, when I was working at Facebook and I would be labeled aggressive or unfriendly and things like that, like I would share it with peers that looked like me, shared certain identities. And what I found was that I wasn't the only one. And that
Mm-hmm.
was a powerful realization for me because I realized by realizing that I'm not the only one, I realized that I wasn't crazy and I realized that I wasn't the problem. I'm like, oh, if other people are experiencing this, clearly there's a larger issue here, right? That's one. Two, I also could have a conversation with the person that gave me that feedback around why my hoodie is unprofessional. That is an educational opportunity that they may not realize that they're being biased, right? It's an opportunity to say, hey, you called me unprofessional. Just to let you know, professionalism is defined as a skill or competence expected of for that role. So this hoodie doesn't take away from my skill or competence. I think you need another adjective to describe me,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's an
Yeah.
educational moment because oftentimes people don't know that they're being biased.
Right. And then there's also a complete separation between how you dress and how much
Yeah,
makeup or tattoos you put on
sure.
and your attitude at work, right? And frankly, the reason why I'm in business and why I can pay my bills and pay this electric, bill and the utilities that power the internet, that powers the Zoom call, is because there are a lot of people who struggle with how do you comfortably be yourself without
Yeah.
having to impose it on other people or defend it or passively or aggressively, just cleanly and assertively, right? There is that sort of not even middle ground, but a completely different way to be yourself without being in someone else's face, without being defensive or
Yeah.
apologetic about it. People struggle with that, being
Yeah.
clean and assertive and direct while also being kind and respectful. That balance is where most of us fail. And that
And
is why communication coaches abound. Why
and this is
get
why I need the app too. Like I had someone this is so like all a lot of the things that we're talking about, these are soft skills, quote unquote, right?
Yep.
And this is often, I think, what like we have the hard skills to get the job. We're in the role.
Mm-hmm.
And but the soft skills are what's gonna set you apart, right? Like
Yep.
Harvard Business Review did a study that said 90% of what sets high performers apart from their peers with the same technical skills is emotional intelligence, right?
Mm-hmm.
But think about like how the hell do you learn it? Like I had to go to therapy to learn emotional
Mm-hmm.
intelligence, right? And then going back to those stigmas around people not being willing to go to therapy to seek that support. I mean, sure, there are other ways, but I'm just speaking for me, right?
Sure, yeah.
So, I mean, I had someone that was testing the app and they said that they used it for a difficult conversation that they want to have with their manager, right? And they said sometimes not only did they struggle to like label the emotion, but also because labeling it is one thing, like that's really
Yeah.
difficult. Getting beyond this like happy, sad, mad. And then being able to communicate it for her, especially because English was her second language. So she
Mm.
struggled with that, right? And then the app like walked her through not only what it was that she was feeling, but also like how to go through it, right? How to go through that conversation. But yeah, those situations are very, very important and difficult.
That's awesome. And so when is it launching officially? Is there like a soft launch, hard launch?
We're pushing it to the App Store this week, so it
Oh,
should be live hopefully next week or the following. But we actually just
awesome.
launched our Kickstarter today, which has discounted rates for a 6 month plan and a year plan. It's like 30% off. So people
Awesome.
can, I
So
would recommend going to Kickstarter
yeah.
so that they can get a discounted rate.
So by the time this airs, it's published. It might already be launched and live. So that's all awesome to hear, and I'll include the link when I share this. Been the most challenging about building this app?
My mindset,
Mm,
getting over the self-doubt, the imposter syndrome, the like, I should probably just go get a job. What am I doing? This isn't going to work.
mm,
I'll tell
mm,
you another thing. I haven't made $1 all year intentionally because
mm.
I've been, people always ask me like, "Oh, how can I support you?" And I don't want to distract or dilute the way that people can do it. I knew that this Kickstarter was going to come, and I wanted to direct or focus people's attention towards one thing. As well as a lot of the conversations that I had last year around this time was like doing speaking engagements, trying to sell myself for speaking engagements.
Mm.
But this year, a lot of the conversations that I've been having was trying to get this app as part of their employee benefits packages and stuff like that. So, um,
Love that idea because that's
yeah,
scalable, right? As opposed to you having to like hustle one on one endlessly. Like that is a nice way to scale it. Brilliant.
yeah. So it's been delaying a lot of the monetization opportunities, but it's a bet that I'm making on hopefully a lot coming in the back half or early next year. But yeah, this is gonna be the first dollar that I make all year.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm a fan. Like I've been a fan for years, and then I think we really connected just a couple of weeks ago. So
Yeah,
I'm excited to kind of use it and share it and talk about it and amplify it because I think it has potential.
thank you.
And so that's really exciting for me. What's the most exciting for me? But I'm not the star of the show. You are. So what's the most exciting thing about this year so far? Or looking ahead, what are you most excited by?
Having people use it and give me the feedback that they have, again, like someone told me it feels like I'm talking to a therapist, and I was
Mm,
like, I couldn't have paid for better feedback, right?
right.
Or people telling me about the use cases that they're using it for. And so I would summarize that by saying seeing the potential. um like I said, right now I'm not monetizing at all, but it's more so about validating use cases and seeing the potential. And it's just about kind of like trusting the process and being like, all right, one step closer, one step closer.
Mm-hmm. And kudos to you for taking that risk, right? I think everyone in different areas of their life, no doubt. And some people are, born to be risk takers. Some people come from, say, entrepreneurial backgrounds, or their parents and great parents and great grandparents were entrepreneurs and business owners. So perhaps it's that much easier, or it's sort of the norm when you're born. And then for other people, going out on your own is like, why the hell would you do that, right? When you have a 9 to 5 or a stable, paycheck. So I'm sure I think you've gotten asked this question on other, podcasts or other places where you've been kind of, shooting your shot and spreading your message. But I do want to hear if we just go back in time for a little bit, like what was the impetus for you to start the entrepreneurial journey and give it a shot?
uh there's Tristan Walker, who's the founder and CEO of Bevel. I believe Bevel got acquired by P&G, if
Mm,
not Unilever, but I think P&G. He was on this podcast where he said a turning point for him was someone asked him like, "What are you uniquely positioned to do in the world?" And that quote has always stuck with me because I was at a job where I was making like pretty good money. I was making like 300K for the year, and I was selling $1 million deals. I was traveling the world at the expense of the company, and I
wow.
wasn't fulfilled. Not only that, but I looked at my job and I was like, anybody could do this job. Granted, like not, sure, certain amount of experience, blah, blah, blah. But I was like, I'm pretty sure thousands of people around the world could do this job. And I was like, you know what people probably, you know what a lot of people probably wouldn't do is quit this job to build a mental health tech company.
Mm,
A lot of people wouldn't quit this job to try to redefine professionalism.
yeah,
Like, I think it takes a certain type of person to go do that and tackle this thing that has been around in our society for hundreds of years, decades, forever. You know what I mean? So
yep,
I think that's what I'm uniquely positioned to do. It's not to sell ads.
yeah. And it is a, not that there's a bad time to do it, but there are worse and better times perhaps. This is a good time because when I go, maybe I'm biased in my own LinkedIn feed, but there's just a lot of talk about mental well-being and mental health and all of the things that are related to that more now than ever in my lifetime, ever. Right. So
Yeah.
it's becoming a topic of common conversation, not just something that we say, yeah, we should talk more about it. We're actually talking about it. And I'm glad because I hated for like, I feel like in the 90s and the early aughts were like, we should talk more about it, but we didn't really. Now, and whether it's social media or again, my own sort of echo chamber within LinkedIn and perhaps Instagram, it's on the radar for me and for the people I hang out with online. So I certainly wish you well in that regard, and I hope the timing is just perfect for you. The other thing that I'm thinking of, because I too quit this 9 to 5 job that I didn't love and had some wonderful friends and amazing bosses, but didn't always align with the mission of the company. But only in retrospect, only now looking back, do I realize like all the awesome-ish skills and experiences and mindset shifts that I had only because I went through that less than ideal experience, right?
Mhm.
So even though in the moment it sucked, looking back, there is this overabundance, there's this treasure trove of stuff that I gained from that experience. So if I were to ask you, and your answer might be nothing, right? I don't want to kind of force it, but I'm curious, looking back at the experience of being an employee, what do you take from that experience, Maze? Whether it's soft skills, hard skills, thoughts, ideas, epiphanies?
Oh my God, so much. But yeah, I mean, I hate school. I would never go back to school. You can't pay me to go back to school.
Yeah.
But I say working at Facebook was like my MBA.
Mm,
Like it was a really, really cool experience, in
yeah.
particular because I got to work with a lot of executives at like, Fortune 500 companies. Um, Whereas like I was doing marketing and sales before, but when you work at some of those larger companies, you get to work directly with the C-suite at 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 our clients. So, getting a peek into like the type of questions that they would ask, their concerns, their challenges, what got them excited, what problems they were looking to solve, and also what a company at that size operates like.
Mm,
I mean, like I would say because of the size of the company, I would say I worked with some of the top sellers in the world. So really seeing like what a class sales organization looks like, how it functions. Like there were just so many intelligent ass people that work
mm,
there. Like sales executives at Facebook were CMOs at other companies. Like sales executives or account executives rather at Facebook were like chief revenue officers at other companies. Like I
mm-hmm.
saw them, like after they left, I saw them go to that position, right?
Yep.
Whereas like account executives at other companies would just be account executives at other companies. Like it's a like
Accelerator. Yeah.
they hire overqualified people for the roles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And my first job, my first full-time job out of college, because I had tons of, little jobs before then, was at a startup, a tech adjacent startup, and a lot of those people ended up doing and continue to do some really really interesting, cool things at the top of their respective fields. So it's sort of that incubator, accelerator. That even though people left that company, they are now doing cool things elsewhere, and that's really neat. And I realized like that was a source of just relationships and insights and networking that I had, underutilized and undertapped. And so I'm just starting to reach out and build events around that. And that's how I tap into it, because it's like this network that I had been cultivating, and that I seeded those germs, those ideas, those seeds, and those relationships over 15 years ago. And I'm like, I'm not gonna let these relationships go to waste. So how effectively do you think now that you're on your own, right? Doing your thing, how effectively have you leveraged all of those amazing relationships that you had before?
I haven't leveraged them as much as I should. But the relationships that I have leveraged and taken advantage more of are the people on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
Like I've made a lot
Yeah.
of I made a lot of amazing, dope, interesting connections on LinkedIn, and that was just a function of me sharing content. Shit, it's how we met, right?
Yep.
And
And,
yeah, I mean, I met a lot of people at Facebook, but I don't think like I'm closer with people that I've never met
mhm,
through LinkedIn than I am with most of the people that I met at Facebook.
yeah, fair enough. I mean, you gotta find your tribe, your community of people. And I find awesome people on LinkedIn all the time. It's my playground. And I've been on it, I think, almost, I want to say 15 or 16 years. So, dinosaur status. I want my pin. I want my lapel, and I'm proud of it.
You
Uh,
deserve it.
it's been a minute. Of course, the first few years I did nothing on it. I had my picture and probably like the job title, and like most other people, or in those first few years, it was, it needed to hit that point, and now it, hit 1 billion people in the last couple of years, and now it's wild. So different beast than it was in like 2007, 2008, for
I feel
sure.
like I just started creating content like maybe 2, 3 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
And the type of content, obviously, it just feels very unfiltered, like real, uncut, authentic, whatever you want to. It's all synonyms of the same shit, right? It feels real, it feels honest, it feels like it's something that you would share off camera. And that's exactly the vibe I give off of. Like, I write the same way that I speak, and people say that, like, I feel like I'm just talking to you. I'm like, yeah, it makes it easy for me. I don't have to worry about super polishing it or hyper editing it. It's nice to just be able to be who you are, and knowing that not everybody has that same luxury, though that can be a little bit of a privilege too. But if enough people start doing it, then there's this groundswell, and people are like, "Ooh, other people are being themselves, and they are not getting fired or penalized or murdered or this or that." It can increase the chances that some people will follow suit. But everybody has different circumstances, different priorities, different needs, different comfort zones. And so, I'm kind of sensitive to that as a coach. But I know that if you see somebody doing something really cool and they're thriving, like, as a human being, you try to emulate that person. I mean, take what you can from them. I don't try to like copy and paste, but I say, hey, how can I use like the average, sort of the scaffold of that person's vibe to amplify what it is that I want to share with the world? I don't want to copy their content. Like, I have never been interested in copying someone's content. That's never even crossed my mind until one time someone said, hey, somebody's copying your content. And I'm like, what? And lo and behold, there was a website, and somebody just scraped my stuff and just put it in as their own. And I just laughed at it because it was just so horribly formatted. And I don't think it exists anymore, but it was just like, oh, people do that. People copy shit.
that's
Not
when you
me.
know you've made it. That's when you know you've
Yeah,
made it. You know
well,
what I mean?
I just need a few more commas and zeros in my bank account. Then I'll know I've made it. But I really do love what I do. And I tend to make more of an impact one-on-one. I tend to be more of that one-on-one coach, but I've done some group trainings in the past as well. So what's on the horizon? Like, looking at the next couple of weeks, you mentioned the launch, and what's next, right? So you launched this app, and what's next for you? What's on the horizon?
I mean, besides celebrating,
Yeah,
I'm doing a lot of celebrating. I'm
awesome,
taking a trip. I'm treating myself. I want to celebrate
awesome.
with the community. I want to bring people together. Because I wouldn't be here without everybody's support, right? And the Kickstarter, hopefully people support and back. But I mean, I like people that follow me, people that comment on my stuff, people that like just listen to the podcast. People like I'm just really thankful for the audience that I've built and the community that I have. And I'm an extrovert, so
Mm,
I want to see people in person. I want to hug people. I want to dance with people. I want to take a shot with people. Like I really want to
right.
celebrate this because um it's just hard for me to celebrate. The story that I tell myself is like I haven't done anything yet to celebrate, but it's also the celebrating that is going to motivate me. Those small wins, right?
Yeah.
It's going to motivate me to continue going because this is just a start. Like launching an app is just a start. Now, the real thing for me is getting this sold into corporate partners to be part of their benefits package or like professional development resources. But
Yep.
what's gonna motivate me to keep going is like celebrating. So that's one. And then in the back half is like trying to get these long-term contracts signed.
And that just in my mind, I mean, again, you have your ideas and you have your channels and all that, but to me, revisiting or just thinking about all those relationships that you built when you were an employee, these are people who are at, major corporations and continue to do their own thing. So, revisiting those relationships where it makes sense for you, right? Because I think even though you're somebody who like makes new relationships, like builds new relationships instantaneously, something about your charm, your vibe, it's instant, but I know that
Thank
I
you.
do that too. I know that I do that too, but like maintaining over the long haul and revisiting old relationships can prove really, really fruitful for me. And so I wanted to share that as just another avenue of potential business for you.
I've been doing that recently, in particular with folks that are in HR teams, just to
Mm,
like catch up, but have more like informational conversations around like help me
yep,
make sense of this world that I'm going to potentially be pitching to. And
sure.
I'm like, damn, I didn't even realize I knew a lot of people in HR, but now,
Yep.
but it's people that I literally haven't spoken to since like college, or
Yes.
people
Yes.
that DM me one day because of a post, but I didn't have time to get back to them.
Right.
But in their message, they were just like, "Yo, I appreciate your content, blah blah." And first, I'm like, "Apologies for not getting back to you." And then second,
It
would
happens.
love to connect. And then people, yo, it's so all right. This is a weird feeling for me when I get on calls with people because I'm nobody. I'm just like a person, regular dude, right? People be like, "Oh my God, I'm having like a starstruck moment." I was like, "For me?
Yep.
What?" Like that shit blows my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
Yep.
happened so many times with some of these recent conversations because it's people that I like, again, we're connected, but we've never had a conversation. Like that blows my mind every single time.
It's awesome. It happens to me too. And for me, it's almost like now that you're talking to them, it's when you're applying for a job, they're like, oh yeah, send me your resume. So now what you're going to be able
Yeah.
to send them is you're going to be able to send them the app and the
Right.
demos and all that. And that is the
Right.
thing that they can now activate, right? Because it's nice to just catch up, but you've actually got something that they can use for their organizations or their friends' organizations. And that's where the monetization can hopefully start, sooner rather than later for you. So that's really, really exciting. Was reading an article, I don't forget who it was, but it might have been in like AA or P magazine, and there was one star on the cover on the front, and it was saying like overnight success, but really she had been working for like decades prior, and only it was not an overnight success. There was a lot of lulls, a lot of hard work with limited or no celebration because there was nothing to celebrate, right? But she just kept going and practicing and honing her craft and continuing to build relationships so that when it all kind of coalesced and came together 20 years later, now she is winning all these awards and is in the spotlight. But really, it's not overnight success. It was all those years and years of work that she did consistently to get to where she is. So that's how I try to think of my own business too. Like there are times when I'm like doing everything and it's like crickets. I'm like, am I doing something wrong? Nope. No, no, no. I gotta just keep going, right? It's like fitness, right?
Yeah.
You don't always see gains every week. You can't. It takes time.
I mean, I agree. That's what I said earlier. Like the most difficult part of this whole process was just reminding myself that every day is just working towards that goal, making progress. And going back to celebrating, like one thing that you got to do is celebrate the win as small as it is, because that's going to motivate you to keep going. It's a reminder that you need to trust the process and you're on the right path.
Appreciate you and I'll continue to support you. I'm excited about this app and I'll start publishing as soon as I start playing with it. And I'm just excited for you. Like you said, you are definitely not nobody to me because you stood out, right? For your vibe and just the unfiltered, energy that you brought to the LinkedIn table was memorable for me versus a lot of the other noise that I hear. So kudos to you for being
I
you.
I appreciate that. And listen, for all the people that are out there that really want to take a risk and are scared to, just ask yourself the question like, what's the worst thing that happens? You go back to what you're doing today. Because that's
Yep.
what I say. Worst case scenario, I go back to selling ads. And I'll
Yep.
live, you know what? I'll live a fucking top 5% life. That's
Yep.
fine.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, it was a, I mean, I shouldn't have assumed, but I assumed this was going to be a pleasant conversation for me anyway. I had fun. Appreciate you so much, Pavel, and I'll be in touch. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be
Sounds
well.
good. Bye.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.